Dazzling some remarkable athleticism and poise. Included in their team, champions in both the disciplines, but perhaps the outstanding stars are the two world gymnastic title holders, Natalia Yurchenko and Dmitry Bilozerchev.
To Wembley Arena, where we've got a young, and as you can hear, a very enthusiastic audience. We've got schools and gymnastics clubs, and they're all seeing at first hand the amazing progress that these Russian gymnasts have made. Now, it's fair to say that this is perhaps the strongest squad that the Russians have ever sent to a Wembley display, pretty much the squad that would have been sent to the Los Angeles Olympics. And these gymnasts are all preparing for events like the European Championships, the World Student Games, the World Championships, all the big events that are coming up in 1985. Well, in the next half hour, we're going to be seeing the Russians at their very best. But we're going to start with a young man, 17 years old, who's already been described as perhaps the greatest gymnast that the sport has ever seen. And waiting at the high bar, we've got the world champion, Dmitry Bilozerchev.
And there he is, 17-year-old world champion Dmitry Bilozerchev, and he really did take that world title in 1983 in fine style. Not only was he the youngest ever at 16, but he won with a record score. And this Wembley audience is literally buzzing with excitement as they see him perform. And a catch-off and a ginga, release and catch moves. He's world champion on this piece of apparatus. Half turn. Some brilliant work, building up to his dismount, a half in, half out. Really have some brilliant gymnastics from this USSR team. And now we go to the other end of the arena.
Now we turn our attention to the asymmetric bars for the first girls' individual exercise of this half of the display. And we welcome to the asymmetric bars the silver medalist overall in the 1983 World Championships, Olga Mostepanova.
And Olga Mostepanova, silver medalist from the World Championships in 1983. A brilliant gymnast now to perform on the asymmetric bars, a piece of apparatus particularly designed for women. Just look at the style and polish of those giant circles. Tremendous work. Just clip the bar on that catch-off, but like a star, she continues without any more mistakes. The skill on asymmetric bars is to keep the routine moving. A little bit short. And she recovered actually from a mistake, and she came off the bar early, but nevertheless it was brilliant.
Now, sports acrobatics. And normally in sports acrobatics, as most of you know, it's either a tempo or a balance routine. But our champion men's four have decided to show us a combination of balance and tempo moves. They're the national champion men's four, Yuri Derepa, Vladimir Malyutsin, Yuri Shokin, and Vladimir Melnikov.
Norman de Mesquita, the stadium announcer, introducing the men's four, last year's World Cup winners, the current European champions. And they've got some really spectacular elements in this performance, not least the four-man tower, and that's what we've got to watch out for, isn't it, Monica?
Oh, yes, some tremendous stuff. It doesn't always come off, but when it doesn't, they always give us a repeat performance.
Preparing themselves for the tower now, and the man at the bottom is Yuri Derepa, and he's going to have the job of carrying something around 40 stone. As the man on the top, that's Vladimir Malyutin, reaches his position.
And one underestimates the skill in perfecting the speed of building this tower and the balance involved. And now just watch the top man, Malyutin. A straddle. One-arm lift to handstand. Look at the bottom man, Derepa, holding all of that weight. How spectacular.
And they also have to dismantle it as well. What a performance. And earlier this week, that tower did go dramatically wrong, and they were clearly very angry with themselves, but it showed how risky, how difficult that exercise is.
And this is really spectacular stuff. The top man, the Lutin, is thrown from the two men. He arrives onto the two men, onto shoulders, onto hands. Really amazing. Up, a full twisting back somersault. Supported there by the basemen, Deripa and Malinkov. Onto the hands. Watch how carefully the two basemen prepare their wrists for the supporting of the top two men. Straight back somersault, very difficult to control, only one somersault at that height. And the tower of strength there.
Artistry and strength from the men's sports acrobatics forum. What a popular act they've been here over the 3 days at Wembley.
Well, it looks as though your applause has encouraged them to do just a little bit more. So a little bit more from our USSR national champion, men's four.
And this is something that the audience really adores, to think that they're performing again for them. Great artists, great spectacular performances. Look at that, a tuck back somersault onto the second man, Shokin, incidentally the newest member of this four-man squad. The rest have been together since '75. Now this is spectacular. Diving, 1.5, somersault, not into water, but a handstand on basemen, Deripa and Malinkov. Brilliant work.
The World Cup winners and the current European champions, Deripa, Shokin, Melnikov and Malutin.
Well, now the first individual pommel horse exercise of the afternoon. We welcome the joint 1984 Moscow News International champion, Vladimir Artemov.
Vladimir Artemov, 20 years old, also the 1983 European silver medalist.
I think it would be interesting to add together and put on display all the medals and trophies that this galaxy of stars from the USSR has won. I think the audience would be delighted to see them, as well as the performances of the stars. Some really startling stuff here. Look how he travels along the horse, uses the handles called the pummels, the flares up to handstands and a controlled landing, and it's only a display.
Now rhythmic gymnastics, and perhaps the most spectacular piece of apparatus, the ribbon. We welcome now the Moscow News International champion, Venera Zaripova.
Modern rhythmic gymnastics, the third element in this Daily Mirror-sponsored Russian display. Venera Zaripova, 19 years old.
Used in modern rhythmic gymnastics, the hoop, the ball, the club, the rope. The ribbon is certainly the prettiest, and from the audience point of view, the most enjoyable to watch. Very difficult to throw and catch this particular piece of hand apparatus. Demonstrations of mobility. Very dramatic performances. All of these girls have dance training, and this is very, very apparent in the beauty of their work. Just look at the split on that leap. just another example of the brilliance of this Soviet team.
Now back to the pommel, an exercise from the young man who is the USSR All Republics champion on this apparatus, Rodion Gabitov.
Rodion Gabitov, 20 years old, also a great prospect for the World Student Games. And this is a really strong piece of apparatus.
Brilliant flares there, travelling from one end of the horse over the pommels to the other end of the horse. Hop change shears before going into his ordinary shears and leg circles. Up to handstand, not quite making the turn, but who would know anyway? Brilliant work.
As we've already seen this afternoon, there's some wonderful work being done on the asymmetric bars. The A bars, a development, of course, from the men's parallel bars. And now another exciting exercise on this apparatus from one of our 3 15-year-olds in this Soviet display team, Oksana Omelyanchik.
Well, many new young stars have got their first introduction to a Western audience at this Wembley display. And this is another, Oksana Omelyanchik, 15 years old, from Kiev.
And what a brilliant worker. And it's interesting to note that Anton Liai Koziev, the junior national training squad manager, is here watching these young stars, and I'm sure he'll be most impressed with that performance in front of this lively audience.
Well, now we stay with the girls. We transfer our attention to the beam. Another of our 15-year-olds. This time it's Elena Shushunova.
And it's fair to say, Monica, that Elena Shushunova really outstanding on the beam.
Oh, yes. Undoubtedly, at the Chunichi Cup in Japan, she won the gold medal on beam, and in fact, in the overall event, came second to the new Olympic champion, Mary Lou Retton. But we in the sport call this girl a real gutsy performer because she attacks everything. She's a really positive worker. And just look at that. A flick straight back, followed by a straight back. So bold.
And all done with really tremendous attack as well.
And I think she's got another one to follow here, an Arab spring straight back. We have difficulty in performing that on the floor, let alone on the beam, which is only 4 inches wide. I always feel the spectacular point about these Soviet gymnasts is the choreography of their floor and beam routines. They always manage to bring in new links, sometimes quite simple skills, but performed really well, and links that have never been performed before. And this really is what the gymnast is after, catching the eye of the judges in competition. And just to add to a brilliant routine, a brilliant dismount, a double back somersault, to a really spotted landing there from Elena Shushunova.
Well, now we turn our attention to the other end of the arena, the parallel bars, where we have Artur Akopian.
Artur Akopian, one of the most experienced members of this Russian squad, 3rd in the World Championships, and a man who really technically is quite brilliant.
Not only is he a firm favourite of the crowd here at Wembley, but he's certainly a firm favourite of the Soviet selectors, because he has, in fact, been on the Soviet team since 1979. Going for a walk on the P-bars there. Front somersault straight up to handstand. Akopian, bronze medalist in the 1983 World Championships, but he's been out for some time with rather a nasty bicep injury, but he looks quite fit now.
And the sad thing, it must be said about Akopian, he was injured for the Moscow Olympics, missed the last, of course, and a man of his talent may never see an Olympic Games. Artur Akopian.
Back to the beam again for one of the most innovative of gymnasts. She has, as I'm sure you all know, had a vault named after her. She invented it. And she was one of the first to work across the beam as well as along it. So it's the overall world champion, Natalia Yurchenko.
And here she is, the one and only Natalia Yurchenko. Just sit back and look at the difficulty in this routine. An Arab spring, straight back somersault to land on one leg. Not only is she a master of the difficult tricks, but she is a beautiful gymnast. She looks so calm and so placid, and yet out in the arena she's full of fun. She's always the leader of all the giggling amongst all of her teammates. But she takes her sport very seriously, as you can see by her tremendous skill level. Won a gold medal in the World Cup in 1982 on this event, and we can see why. Now just look at this movement. This is working across the beam, a flick-flack. She's going to jump, land on her hands, circle around the beam. Very, very few gymnasts in the world doing it, but she was the innovator of that movement. And landing square on the end of the beam, but still managing to put a very difficult double back somersault dismount onto the end of that beautiful routine.
The brilliance of the world champion, Natalia Yurchenko.
Well, now to the floor, and of our three 15-year-olds, this one's the youngest. She is, in fact, the youngest member of this Soviet display team, but she is the joint overall European junior champion. It's Irina Baraksanova.
Yes, Irina Baraksanova, 15 years old, the new junior European champion. She took that title in Rimini. Comes from Tashkent, 1,000 miles from Moscow.
But to get the right training, she's had to move to Moscow to train with the best coaches. A brilliant young classical gymnast. Dance elements, shapes, and feel for music is really something special for somebody who's only 15. Double back somersault, the legs split to assist rotation, and a broad base on landing stops the gymnasts from injuring their ankles on such difficult tumbles. Flick back, whip back, flick back, straight back. In competition, she would use a more difficult combination, but with the very busy 1985 season ahead, young gymnasts like Irina can't really take any risks in displays. And as we can see, that policy really is perfection first and difficulty next. Not demonstrating tremendous difficulty, the reasons I've given, but certainly a beautiful dancer and a beautiful performer.
Well, we retain our attention on the floor because it's time for more rhythmic gymnastics, this time with her hoop. It's Venera Zaripova.
Venera Zaripova on her first visit to London. One point that has to be made for the modern rhythmic gymnastics here at Wembley, they're working, aren't they, Monica, on a very difficult surface for them?
Oh yes, modern rhythmic gymnastics, gymnasts rather, work on an all-wool carpet and generally on a solid floor. Now this is a nylon carpet and a sprung floor, so it makes the reaction of the apparatus into the floor very, very difficult to cope with, and the work on the ankles is very difficult. She certainly doesn't look as though she's working under any hardship. A dive through the hoop there. Perfect timing. elegantly performed there. Nice contrast in the music and change in tempo. Modern rhythmic gymnasts only work with one instrument, the piano. Quite difficult to cope with catching the hoop under the spotlights of television and the arena. But like all champions, making the best of the facilities available and producing a beautiful hoop routine.
Well, now we turn our attention back to the beam. A Wembley favourite at the beam, former World Cup champion, the reigning World Cup champion, Olga Bicherova.
Olga Bicherova, the world champion in 1981.
A firm favourite with the Wembley crowd, little Olga Bicherova. She's had a very difficult year. She fractured her elbow at the end of last season, and she has to cope with coming back into the scene where her Soviet stars around her, younger than her, are learning new movements, and she has to try and keep at the top of the ladder.
This is the element where she really shows all her marvellous artistry.
Oh, she's a tremendous performer. In training, she was having quite a lot of courage problems on that move there called a corbett, and her coach had to stand in, but as soon as she's put on a pedestal and has to perform, she finds the courage. That's a true artist and a true competitor. She's now 18-year-old, very tiny girl, very light frame, built ideally for gymnastics, like so many of these young girls. A very positive takeoff into a nice high double back somersault there from 1981 world champion Olga Bicherova.
No Daily Mirror Soviet gymnastics display would be complete without tumbling, and as always, we have two of the best in the world. Welcome, please, Lyudmila Gromova and Igor Brickman.
It's nearing the end of this brief taste of the Russian talents.
So first, a run from Lyudmila Gromova.
There we see world champion Lyudmila Gromova. Oh, what a nice high double back somersault. A tremendous performer, 27 years old. Igor Brickman, world champion. Isn't that incredible?
And really, he's barely warming up.
And now a second run from our young lady world champion tumbler, Lyudmila Gromova.
Among the titles she's won, the World Championship, World Cup Championship, European Championship, Russian National Championship.
In fact, they call her Russian World Champion Absolute, don't they?
With very good reason. Lyudmila Gromova just composing herself at the start of the run.
Really getting a lot of speed along this tumble run. Double back straight somersault, whip back, flick flack, and full twisting back. What a combination of elements there.
And now a second run from Igor Brickman.
A very powerful little man, Igor Brickman. Look at the size of him. He's not very tall, but extremely powerful, building up speed. A full in, full out straight. If I can interpret that, it's two somersaults straight with a full twist.
The crowd here at Wembley thoroughly enjoying this display because Brickman and Gromova, marvellous gymnasts and marvellous show people as well, almost.
Now once again, Gromova.
And a series of whip-back somersaults, in other words, low somersaults, followed by a full twisting somersault.
And now something just a little bit special from Igor Brickman.
And this really will be a little bit special because we've seen him trying to perfect this all week, and it's massively complicated, also a wee bit dangerous, and he hasn't always brought it off. And once again, a few problems, but it must be said, Monica, that what he's trying to do here is absolutely extraordinary.
Very, very difficult. One can never make up minds whether he's bleeding the audience or whether he's a little bit nervous and has to have 2 or 3 runs.
Well, I'm sure after a little bit of treatment, Igor will be
Physiotherapist
fine
just
and ready
tending
to
to
go,
that
so
injured muscle.
this
I'm
is
sure he's
something
made it
very
better
special.
with that little magic touch.
And he will try it again. So let's hear a big hand now for Igor Brickman.
Didn't even need the magic sponge. Igor Brickman. He really packs so much into this run, it's hard to describe, but let's hope he pulls it off.
Got the speed, I think he's going. Oh, yes, brilliant. Brilliant work.
Igor Brickman.
Full twisting, double back straight.
Igor Brickman really bringing this Wembley crowd to its feet, and it's been a display which has really exemplified the standards that Russian gymnastics has reached as we approach a crucially important year. And Dmitry Bilozerchev and Natalia Yurchenko really leading the Russian challenge as we head for World Championship year. But from the moment